have two absences, Nicola and Terrell. They have the motion that we accept their absences. So, okay. David, you?
Second.
Okay, 1 second. All in favor? Any opposition? Very good. Approval of minutes. Any comments, any updates, corrections to the minutes? The only correction I have is that at the beginning of the minutes, it says virtual meeting call to order. It probably should just say meeting call to order, since we are in person. May I have a motion that the minutes be received? Okay, Mark moved and you have a second. All in favor? Any opposition? Excellent. Public comment? Anyone signed up, Wayne, either digitally or? Yes, okay. Yes, we do. Mr. Harris, if you can sign up to speak. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Harris Wells. I appreciate the opportunity to present my stormwater situation to the commission today. I'm representing Valley Lake, a nonprofit corporation formed in 1974 when the developer of the Hidden Valley subdivisions in North Raleigh sold the 11 acres to the neighborhood for $1. At the time, being in North Raleigh was out in the country. The property serves as a recreation area and wildlife sanctuary for North Raleigh with a yearly membership fee of only $50. We are not a homeowners association. We are a private nonprofit. We're open to the entire North Raleigh neighborhood. We currently have 82 families as members that enjoy the lake grounds. It's run by a volunteer board of directors that has strived to maintain the lake over the years, taking care of this wonderful asset of the neighborhood. During rain events, a tremendous amount of Raleigh stormwater flows out of this culvert and travels about 300 feet across the lake to reach the lake. When Lynn Road was widened to 5 lanes about 20 years ago, this volume saw a major increase. The stream banks, as you can see, are experiencing major erosion and washes into Valley Lake as sediment. In 2007, we passed the hat and raised money to dig out a lot of the sediment and construct a silt pond. While that helped, we still have major problems with sediment filling up the south end of the lake. This is just what used to be a small creek that fed into the lake, has become this, torrential wash in the rain events now, and it's washing these banks into the lake. I first started asking for the city's help in 2015, working with engineer Robert Kirkpatrick. While we were able to get on the city's radar, the stormwater policy changed in 2016, and our situation was considered too low priority to receive any immediate help. In 2018, I was able to get a group from the Stormwater Division, including Wayne Miles, to come take a look. Wayne saw the need for help and had some good ideas. He suggested I contact Dr. Barbara Dahl at NC State, an engineer, professor, and extension specialist who might be able to use graduate students to study and design a solution for the severe erosion. 2 years later, we received a thorough 38-page study and design solution done by Dr. Dahl and her grad students at no cost. That project would have probably cost $10,000 to $15,000 if done by the city or private engineers. This was Wayne's idea to help find an efficient solution and hopefully get us into a future program the city was developing for stream bank stabilization. Now that that program has come into fruition, we hope to be included and one day get help from the city of Raleigh to stop the impact of all the erosion and the silt building up in Valley Lake. The lake catches and controls hundreds of thousands of gallons of Raleigh stormwater that benefits North Raleigh. We also hope to qualify, even though one of the requirements of the program is paying the stormwater utility fee. The lake does not, but each of the 83 families that belong to the lake do. We also hope the priority scoring will take into consideration how devastating it is to have the sedimentation filling up the lake. Thanks for your time, and I hope the city of Raleigh will be able to help us one day with our stormwater issue. And just a couple of shots. This does show Dr. Dahl, and you might recognize Mitch Woodward there, and those grad students that came out. And they did an extensive study of the stream, all the drainage area that flows into the lake, and they produced a fantastic 38-page report where they studied all of this. And my understanding is it has Barbara Dahl's engineer stamp on it, so it would be a big step towards getting someone to execute the project for us, and that's thanks to Wayne and hooking us up with Barbara Dahl, was extremely helpful. So we hope we can get some help. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming and presenting. Yeah, Mr. Chair, so just one contextual comment. So the item, the 4 o'clock item on the agenda here that Chaz will be presenting, the policy changes related to drainage assistance and stream stabilization. That's the item that Mr. Wells had referenced. And as you recall, one of the issues was that was given as an example of a property that under the old policy would not qualify because it did not pay a stormwater utility fee. The only reason it didn't pay a stormwater utility fee is it didn't have enough impervious area to qualify. But under the rewritten policy, it would qualify for the stream stabilization policy. So just for context, in relation to that upcoming agenda item. Okay. All right. Any other comments, public comments? None that I'm aware of. Okay, Wayne? So, the first item I would like to mention is, in Commissioner Hill's absence, I will give the Planning Commission, update. And there are 2 rezoning cases in the Walnut Creek watershed that I think would be of interest to SMAC, given their the size and the proximity to downtown South and in the Walnut Creek area where we know there are some flooding issues. The first one is C 7221. It's in Council District B. The map is shown here. As you can see, it is near the intersection of Lake Wheeler Road and Maywood so that is just to the east there of the farmers market and kind of south of Dix Park vicinity. So fairly large rezoning request, about 30.5 acres. As you can see, there's a mix of current zoning, including some mixed use in residential 6. The requested rezoning CX20UL is a commercial mixed use designation. And my understanding is that 20 refers to a maximum height of 20 stories on that property. So some dense mixed use residential or commercial would be allowed if that rezoning request were approved. There are, this is currently in the Planning Commission committee process. And so would be projected to come to the Planning Commission in the future, probably in early October. So we can continue to track that one. There is a current condition that has been proposed to require green stormwater infrastructure be included in any tier 3 site plan submittal. So if approved and accepted, that condition would become a regulatory requirement as part of the development of that piece of property.
Just to, yes, well, that PB is, but I don't know how that floodplain is right up there. I mean, it's pretty, it's, you get very close to Maywood.
Yes, and there is some, let's see, across Maywood from Walnut Creek, and it's FEMA floodplain. So yes, the floodplain does come right up close to Maywood Avenue from the south. I don't know that it crosses Maywood Avenue, but it's right in that vicinity.
The creek on Dorothea Dix, right? This is the creek it crosses.
I'm sorry, is it?
This creek starts on the Dorothea Dix property. Is that where it goes through the Dorothea Dix?
It does, yes, correct. Right, and it comes down, yes, I think there is a drainage way that comes through this property from the north, from Dixie, and goes south into our creek. Right. So if there's any other information, let me know. We're glad to track this, Phil, and give you all updates.
Can you say who the applicant is?
I could, but I do not know that information. I can look it up, provide that. Just something else too. So, this case is on the rezoning portal for the city. So there's the whole application and everything is publicly available if anyone's interested or anyone listening in the crowd. It's a very helpful portal. If you just, search for rezoning portal and put in the case number, it'll take you right to the whole application and all of the details and background information if anyone wants to do some more research. Yeah, I think it's important that we pay attention to this one and also, Z 5322. Are you about to talk about that? Yes, okay, yes, we have that one next. Matt, if you could move to the next slide if we're ready. So this is another one in the same vicinity. This is just to the east of the last one. And you can see the outline near South Wilmington Street, Prospect Avenue. And so this is the Council District C and D. Also at a similar stage at the Planning Commission Committee. Last week, it's just shy of 44 acres, and the rezoning request for this one is from R6, which is the yellow, and to an RX5 UL and an RX4. And so this is still a residential density that's being requested. It would just allow 4 or 5 story buildings, more like apartments. There would be a higher density of residential use.
And there's a creek right through that's a forested property with a creek running through it. It's
It is.
totally undeveloped right now.
This one has a lot of FEMA floodplain on it. So as you all recall, under the revised floodplain regulations that the commission was involved in getting passed, there is no development allowed in the FEMA floodplain at all, which would apply to this project because it is vacant.
Yeah, when you look at these two, zoning cases, it's 75 acres, and we add in its proximity to downtown South of 150, that's 225 acres. All in the Walnut Creek watershed, all, close to some very flood prone areas. It's a huge amount of space. So yeah, I think it's important for SMAC to pay attention to both of these because we can't view them in isolation, but particularly since 2020, the redevelopment that's happening in that part of the city.
I mean, from stormwater perspective, see this too, as positive as they're going vertical, which, less impervious surface, more density, provided that, like provide stormwater management and it provide buffers, especially on this one, right up on the creek. It opens up an opportunity to do good development if it's done right.
If there's no further questions, I'll move on to the next item. We do have a stormwater team update I'd like to announce. So George, I hope I don't butcher his last name too much. Anagnostopoulos was promoted last month to the engineering inspection support supervisor position in our capital improvements line group. George has been with the city for 15 years. For 9 of those years, he has been in our stormwater inspections coordinator group, overseeing development inspections, erosion sediment control. So he also has reviewed FEMA elevation certificates and was also a senior service specialist in transportation field services George is a certified floodplain manager, certified erosion sediment and stormwater inspector. So, we're glad to announce his promotion to go, and that's the IB role, which is a very important role for us. A few more, moving on to high priority topics. The first one I would like to, it's a follow-up from, last month. As we mentioned, our stormwater management plan update is up for public comment. That public comment period closes tomorrow. So, still an opportunity if there, anyone wishes to comment. And it applies to the, audience listening in, from the public as well. That is available on the city's website, and just search for stormwater management plan. The next item, we had mentioned the NPDS municipal stormwater permit audit that it did take place last week. And let me just quickly turn it over to Justin Harcum. Justin led our effort to be in compliance, and it was a huge team effort over the last 2 years to get ready for that compliance. So I commend the whole team, but if you want to announce the news, Justin.
Yeah, good news, no deficiencies. It was a good exercise with NCDET staff, some good recommendations, a good opportunity to see what trends, MS4 compliance trends are throughout the state. So positive, a shout out to the entire Stormwater Division team and some of our partners in the other parts. So thank you all for your support. So.
And I will say also, Justin gave a presentation on that entire process at the National Public Works Conference. It was held in Charlotte earlier this week. There was a standing room only audience, and he did an excellent job, and the message was well received. So lots of good feedback at the national conference on that process and presentation. And we also did really quickly at that same conference, Kelly Daniel made a presentation on our flood early warning system, which you all have heard a presentation from Kelly on. Equally well received at the national conference. So lots of good interest in that project that we're doing. Next item, I mentioned to the commission previously that we had been awarded by city council funding from the city's ARPA allocation, which is the American Rescue Plan Act. Stormwater has received $3 million for several projects related to green stormwater infrastructure, heat island mitigation, the Rose Lane flood access improvements project. And we are issuing a request for proposals for engineering support. That was issued yesterday. And so that will be available for the next 3 weeks, Don, I think.
Two items for issues today. Check out the interactive purchasing system. And really appreciate the commission's support and the council's support for this process. It's a very exciting process.
Right. So we'll be receiving engineering proposals, reviewing those. We'll keep you all up to date on that process. But very pleased to have those projects moving forward. And then lastly, notices prior to construction. We do have three projects moving into construction, expected within the next 90 days. One is the Western North Ridge Stormwater Improvements Project, a large project in North Raleigh, Sierra Drive drainage improvements. This is a neighborhood improvements project where road overtopping has been causing some localized flooding. And then 2 channel repair projects in the York Gate Drive and West Brewery area. Smaller projects, but important channel repair projects that will be moving forward. And that's all I have for my report.
Thank you, Wayne. Samantha.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So quiet in here. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Samantha Prop. I'm the relatively new News River Keeper. So I live here in Raleigh. I work throughout the News watershed. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've been up to. But first, hopefully to start a little bit with background about me, so you know who I am. I did start back in April, so I've been on it for about 5 months. This is my 6th month in it. I'm originally from Florida. I spent about 1 to 3 months out of every year growing up living in Western North Carolina in the Black Mountains. Y'all know the South Toe River. That's my home heart river. I love that place. So living here kind of feels like somewhere between the swamplands of Florida and the mountains. Feels really good to be kind of between those homes. But I spent 10 years kind of on a circuitous journey, living in Oregon. I got my master's in education, taught high school. I taught a bit of environmental justice at the University of Oregon. And then I wanted to do more hands-on work, and I was involved in forest conservation. So I worked a lot in public lands advocacy and forest protection. And now I find myself working in these urban environments. So I'm a lot of this information about stormwater and urban drainage. This stuff is really exciting and new to me. So I love the opportunity to be here and to kind of listen in on y'all's meeting. All right, so I guess I'll start by talking about what it is that I do. A lot of folks ask me, what am I keeping? I'm the News River Keeper. Out there, girl. And I like to say, you know, I'm keeping the river healthy. I'm keeping the river in people's hearts. And to some degree, I'm keeping the river secrets. Because I like to say, sometimes I feel like I know too much. And some of the things I'm going to talk about are some of the issues that I know I'm learning a lot about, that you all probably know a lot about too, that are the main issues that I'm seeing for the river. And there's a lot of overlap with those and the stuff that you all do here. But overall, I'm kind of a mixed bag of things. I'm an investigator, a scientist, an educator, an advocate, and a public spokesperson for the river. So on the ground, it kind of looks like a lot of different things. I don't have a regular kind of day. Some days I'm out monitoring the watershed, so we'll be doing water sampling. We do that both on we've got regular protocols that we do, and then we also have discretionary sampling. So folks call in a pollution issue, we'll go out and check it out. Other days I'm up in a plane, flying over the watershed, taking pictures. We do regular aerial monitoring of CAFOs, condensed animal feedlot operations. We also do regular monitoring of developments and things that are basically land-changing activities is stuff that we got an eye on from the sky. And we are advocates. Sometimes we're, you know, meeting with elected officials. We're meeting on the local, on the state, and also on the federal level. My colleague and I were out in DC just a couple months ago doing some lobbying and meeting our representatives out there. And education, of course. So some days I'm out talking to, you know, folks, meeting with kids, ages elementary school all the way through college. So kind of varied, every single day is different. And y'all are familiar with the News River Basin, but I just like to show the picture. My job previously was to upper and lower News River. It was a split. We actually changed that. So now I'm on the entire News River Basin, and we have added a staff scientist as support. So I've got a lot of sampling support. So I don't physically have to be everywhere all the time, but I do work out of Raleigh and then also out of our New Bern office down here. And everything in between, all the way from the headwaters up above Falls Lake, all the way down to Oriental, where the watershed meets the sound. So that is my watershed. And the issues, then sometimes I know too much, keeping the river secret issues. All the stuff that y'all, you know, are pretty familiar with: bacteria, nutrients, sediment and erosion issues, trash in our waters, stormwater concerns, oh my. That's all the things, and the list goes on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of those issues. I'm going to spend less time going into the details of them and more about what we're actually doing on them, so y'all know kind of what Sound River is up to. Waste in our waters is a big one. Obviously, this is something y'all are really familiar with. We monitor bacteria in water, in especially our recreational waters. Y'all maybe are familiar with our swim guide program. We're going to talk about that a little bit and how we do that, but not only from human waste, but also CAFOs. Less of an issue in Raleigh. We don't have those up here, but in the lower watershed, this is a big source of bacteria in the water. And so we do bacteria testing up and down the news throughout the swim season. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we'll do that discretionary sampling. If someone calls in, you know, there's a big flood and these are lagoons that are coming into the river, or if someone notices something pouring into the river, we'll go out and sample for bacteria there too.
Samantha, please define CAFOs, not everyone.
Yes, CAFOs, thank you. So bad with the acronyms. condensed animal or confined animal feedlot operations. So basically factory farms. These are, the places where they've got lots of hogs. These are swine. So these are waste lagoons, and that's kind of an outdated practice that's been grandfathered in, unfortunately. And with flood issues, this is going to continue until we handle it properly. So that's one of the big areas of our work in the lower watershed. Not so much up here. But one way that we kind of keep track of this is through our swim guide program. This is a really, really great program. These are our sites in the upper watershed. Today I was actually up here in Falls Lake this morning, finishing out our summer round of swim guide sampling. We're about done for the year. We will have some spots that we do throughout the rest of the year. We just got some funding to do year-round sampling in a number of locations, but they won't be as many locations as our summer sample sites. These are just our sites in Raleigh, in the Raleigh area. So you can kind of see what we've been doing. And just to give you kind of like what our sites usually come up as, Falls Lake this year was passing in water quality standards the entire summer, which was fantastic to see. Unfortunately, there's a lot of the other places that did not pass water quality standards significant number of times throughout the summer. Especially Buffalo Road was the major problem site over and over again. We had over the regulatory amount of bacteria, fecal bacteria, E. coli in the waters there. Also, Gurney, occasionally Anderson Park and Pool Road were tricky, troubled sites. So we're going to keep trying to figure out, what's going on with that. And here's how you can kind of see our results. We've got them on our website. We do our weekly water reports, so we'll have that report coming out for this week tomorrow. And then we've got text alerts that you can sign up with. So it just texts you every week. It says, here's where it's safe to swim, here's where it's not. And I just wanted to mention Little Rock Creek. I live in the Walnut Creek watershed, and this is my, neighborhood creek. I walk there every day with my dog on Little Rock Creek Trail. And so I had the opportunity to go work with the youth corps at Walnut Creek Wetland Center to do some sampling. And we did some discretionary sampling of Little Rock Creek just for fun to kind of see what was in the water. And this is my tray that you can this is how we read our bacteria results. And when each of these cells lights up, that means that it's positive for E. coli. So this was off the charts for E. coli in Little Rock Creek. And so bad news, but also moving forward, the good news is we're talking about developing a partnership with some folks at the Little Rock Creek or the Walnut Creek Wetland Center and also the local university to do regular sampling there. So hopefully we get a better idea of kind of what's going to be going on in terms of E. coli contamination after some of the infrastructure repairs go down, which are underway. So hopefully that will improve. So the next issue, another one everyone's probably familiar with, but nutrients kind of goes hand in hand with the bacteria. We've been seeing a lot of algae blooms. Our office, we just got some exciting microscopes. So we're working with the Phytoplankton Monitoring Network to essentially monitor and identify these little guys, this microcystis and this Stabilization, two different kinds of cyanobacteria that are essentially blue-green algae poison, can produce that toxin. So we will get a call from someone who says, there's weird algae in the lake, or, what's going on here? We'll ask them to send us a picture. If we can, we'll go out to the site, we'll grab a water sample, we'll look at it through our microscope. This is me over at Robertson Mill Pond, where we did find a blue-green algae outbreak a couple months ago. I think it's been resolved since then. And then we'll let folks know. We'll work with the DEQ to try and make sure it gets on their dashboards and people know about it and their dogs aren't swimming in it and they're not swimming in it and all that. And this is just an example of some of the educational work we've done. We put together a little video to try and explain to people what is blue-green algae and what can you do about it? How do you stay safe? Litter. Another one y'all are, familiar with living in downtown Raleigh. If you do, our urban waterways are filled with litter. We're watching both the macroplastics and the microplastics. So we've just started studying kind of these smaller than 5 millimeter in size plastics that are dispersed throughout our waterways everywhere. And so we've been actually doing sampling to try and get a sense of how many microplastics are in our waters. I've been doing every month sampling in Little Rock Creek. And we've been doing sampling in the lower watershed and also in the Campon watershed to try and get a sense of that. And for the macroplastics, we have really fun clean outs that we do with the community, sometimes on the water, sometimes on the land. People find all kinds of weird things. It's also a great community building, just friendship building experience to pull trash out of a river together. And we're very excited because anticipation. There we go. This is a new device that we were just granted to put in. We just put one in New Bern several months ago. I've been working with some friendly faces here to try and get another one put into Raleigh, and we're almost there. And this contraption will be in Little Rock Creek when we have the final go. So basically what this is doing is capturing, it's floating, so all the aquatic creatures swim underneath. It's not catching anything, and it captures all the trash, not catching anything but trash. And then we go and clean it out essentially whenever it's ready. So we've got scouts who look at it and we do group cleanouts. And it's a good way to kind of get all that trash instead of doing the sporadic whack-a-mole, putting the boulder up the hill sort of cleanouts that we've been doing. And then some weird things in all the creeks. So you get to see kind of what people are accidentally throwing away, what's washing off into the waters. Sedimentation and erosion. This one has been something that I was familiar with coming out of working in public lands before in forested lands, but the urban issues have been quite new to me. I've been working very closely with folks out in Durham County on some development issues. There's an area out there that I will say that I think that y'all's stormwater work is kind of a shining model for what I would like to see other places do. And there aren't, a lot of the places that I work, a lot of the municipalities throughout the watershed are not as on top of it as Raleigh is with stormwater. And one of the, results is that we got creeks up in Durham County that are running red with clay after every rainstorm because of a slew of permitted developments all along the same creek. And so this is one area that we've been working. We did actually have some exciting successes in this area. This is clipped from some media that we got, media attention on this issue in Lit Creek, and we actually did, thankfully, it seems like the planning board is starting to hear, these concerns, and drinking water quality and water quality is part of the conversation after rezonings. And there was a giant subdivision, a 280-acre subdivision that would have converted kind of forested area in the Natural Heritage Registry into 650 plus townhomes. That was voted down by the planning board. And that was, I think, a huge win that shows there's some interest in talking about responsible development and green stormwater measures. But for now, the creek is still running red after every rain. And we're about to get into a protocol of turbidity sampling, and we're going to do some macro invertebrate sampling to figure out the health of the creek. So that will give us some good data that we can hopefully lean on for more changes in the future. And last but not least, this is y'all's bread and butter. The thing that ties all the other things together, obviously, the thing that ties bacteria, nutrients, litter, erosion, sediment together is the stormwater issue. Again, this one is kind of the newest one for me. I'm fascinated by urban drainage now. I can't look at anything in the city without thinking about how the water flows through it, which is a blessing and a curse. But I'm thankful because we've got some really amazing folks on our staff who are very skilled in sort of the ways of green stormwater infrastructure. We have an entire program in Sound Rivers called the Campus Stormwater Program. And what we do is we essentially get grants, and then we help community colleges and we help middle schools implement green stormwater projects. And those can either be retrofits, fix some things that are broke that exist, or they can be kind of like planning for future development, putting things in place for smarter future development. And we've done over 15 projects since we started in 2011 on this, all across, mostly in the lower watershed, but really throughout both the Neuse and the Campon. So we're really proud of them. A lot of cool things like this. We got rain gardens, we got cisterns, really just, whatever seems most effective, floodplain restoration, the list goes on. So that's kind of what we're doing on the green stormwater end of things. I have here kind of future systemic policy change, just to mention that there's another thing that we're going to be working on kind of on the policy level, and that I think we'll be probably engaging with elected officials out in Raleigh on. There was I think in 2018, y'all are probably familiar with Senate Bill 469, kind of included, it's sort of passed under a number of different issues, but at the very end, there was a technical change that was made that made it illegal for local municipalities to pass an ordinance to require stormwater measures on redevelopments. And so that's a problem, I think. I think a lot of folks would agree. And so we're really hoping to change that little technical alteration, because we'd love to see redevelopments happening. We think that's kind of the way to go, especially here in Raleigh. We've got a lot of space to redevelop in smart ways, and we'd love to see that actually being done in smart and stormwater efficient ways. So hoping to get more support on that effort as well. And that's pretty much it. I'm happy to, answer questions. I don't know how I'm doing on timing, but that's sort of the run of what we do.
Thank you, Samantha. Any questions?
Where was that, trash trap maneuver located?
It's on Jack Smith Creek,
Okay.
which goes into Duffy Field Canal, which is, I can kind of like tell you more or less where it is in the community, but yeah, it's a very small urban creek that it's very unassuming urban creek, but it has a lot of implications for, the news because it connects not too far downstream.
Curious, that Riverkeeper, how are you funded? Is it a state position? And then, you guys, you've been around, not you, but the Riverkeeper's been here forever, right? 20 years, right? So I'm just trying, I don't know how you exist.
We neither, sometimes.
Okay.
It's, no, we get a lot of different grants. We got a lot of grant funders and a lot of, private donations. We're a nonprofit. So, that's the nonprofit way of funding. And that's all available information too online if you want to know who our grant funders are.
It's a national organization, correct?
Sound Rivers, actually, we're just here in North Carolina, and we house just my position, the News Riverkeeper, and we house the Hamilton Guitar Riverkeeper, and we've got some other staff support, like our staff scientists and our communication specialists. But we are a part of a national Waterkeeper Alliance, which houses, all of the riverkeepers and waterkeepers in the nation and actually in the world. So there's a lot of us, but North Carolina has the most riverkeepers out of any state in the country. So yay us.
I have a question about the E. coli level in Little Rock Creek. That first came to my attention about 2019, 2020. What can be done? Of course, we're limited in time, but just some initial thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, the issue that I'm finding, and I think that probably folks in the city know this all too well as well, is that it's not at first I thought maybe it was a specific source, and oftentimes it can be with like an SSO, sanitary sewer overflow, but with these issues, I think a lot of it is, more systemic. It's not just one source, it's many sources. As we know, our infrastructure is old and a lot of it needs updating, and there's a lot of different, sources of contamination. And so I'm trying to do some kind of sampling to rule it out, or to get a sense of the general areas where things are coming from. So upstream, downstream sampling, and you just kind of narrow in to figure out where it's coming from. But it's hard because it looks like someone threw a bunch of darts at the wall. That's what the data looks like. It's just it's all over in the urban areas. And that's, not just Raleigh, that's most big cities. So that's why I say keeping the river secrets. It's, an unfortunate reality of our urban living. I think it's something we can be better at, but it's, addressing the reality that it's sort of pervasive.
In your second to the last slide around that Senate bill, I remember that in 2018, I called it the Valentine's bill that was passed on Valentine's Day. And certainly it ties our hands in how we can influence policy that can make a tremendous difference in GSI and LIB.
Yeah. It'd be great to see your hands untied that way.
All right, thank you, Samantha.
I really appreciate it. Thanks, Tom.
All right, Chad. Back up. Little deja vu.
Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be back here with these projects again. And so this is September fiscal year 23 project review. So an overview of the presentation, drainage system stormwater program overview. We'll look at the pending projects
then the project requests. We create our recommendations and questions or falls on the project. So the stormwater management division core mission is to preserve and protect life, support healthy natural resources, complement sustainable growth in the rural community, and the drainage assistance program, definitely looks to strive and achieve that. So just a little refresher. And again, this is more of a pressure, but just want to cover it while we're here. So in order to qualify, you must have property within the city limits, has water runoff from public property or street, be willing to donate a drainage easement, pay the stormwater fee. We do not cover nuisance flooding or lots of drainage. So the funding overview, we have $1.25 million in annual funding. It's a lot for this fiscal year. Now, that doesn't mean the funds will be spent this year. They could be, but I can only spent in future fiscal years. With that 8 projects, with that $1.25 million, we'll fund that 8 projects. And funding was based on the ranking prioritization model. This is the prioritization model. You can see the 20 projects that are before us. Next 20 projects. I do want to point out that last month this number was 90, and I appreciate the feedback and catching that. Thank you so much. I will say that was a user error. That falls on me. I was tweaking with the system. I put in 90, but this number of 29.51, which is the total project score, was reading from a different spreadsheet, so it didn't impact. So just want to clarify that. We'll be looking at 2 projects today. We have Pool Road, 1504, as well as 5 other properties in the area, and 6208 Brentwood improvements, which involves 2 projects. So the first is we have 1320, 1402, 1404, 1412, 1502, and 1504 Pool Road. You can see it's a older neighborhood on the east side of Raleigh, south to the middle of downtown. And we have, I mentioned last time that we've got an ongoing project that's in the preliminary design stages of 1308 Pool Road, which is a couple of properties upstream. We've kind of halted that right now so we can kind of combine forces to save all the costs, save all mobilization costs and construction. And so again, refreshing, we have 1320 Pool Road. We have some erosion that's getting to about 15 feet of a structure there. We have 1412 Pool Road. Here looking, this is the pipe. That's really now no longer a pipe anymore. We have 1412 Pool Road. So looking at the other end of that pipe, you can see where that pipe is above ground. Needs repair. Looking at 1504 Pool Road. This picture doesn't quite do it justice. I'll be on the next slide, kind of looking at split properties between 1504 and 1502. You can see that erosion, significant erosion going on there. And then another picture that I had looking from 1320 Pool Road down 1402 Pool Road. And so the plan, as mentioned, looking to do about 400 more feet of stream erosion, riprap works encroaching on the building, and we'll do slope vegetation solutions when possible. And then that pipe that's really no longer a pipe be removed and replaced with another niche. And so again, one of the things that we want to do is just kind of compare projects in the past. And you can see with the 1308 Pool Road, there's a couple properties upstream that its numbers are fairly similar. We've got a number of different criteria that goes in this model. We have about 50 different inputs that go in, so we're not always going to be 100% consistent, but our staff definitely tries for consistency in that regard. And you can see kind of similar project that the numbers, generally speaking, are comparable. We would estimate $30,000 for design, $200,000 for construction, and $230,000 for total project costs. A little conservative, but also taking into account that if we can bundle and combine forces with the other pool of projects.
That should be a cost saving for us. So 1308 Pool Road, a little bit longer pipe prison, 2 properties, 160. So let's point out stop for questions.
The only comment I had to say when I had last month, it's a little bit north, the developer pulled a rezoning request.
Yes.
For that property. And I think it's just a matter of time before someone else redevelops that. So how can this be as, integrated as possible? So that the work done now, is not negated by, the redevelopment that will happen just a little bit north of this proposed site.
Yes, I think that's a valid point. I think one of the things I've heard is that with all the redevelopment that has gone on, the erosion has gone worse. So we would like to, mitigate those, with folk solutions, with some riprap, to prevent, any redevelopment that does not prevent the redevelopment that could occur, from stopping any potential issues that would bring problems.
Do you guys have already ideas, solutions out there, what you could try to do
Or which
for
side?
the pool road to address the problem?
Yeah, I mean, we would, we're gonna open cut the section of pipe. And this section will probably be riprap, and this section will probably be a slow vegetative solution.
It's gonna get worse if that development happens upstream, right? And the solution may not. Is it more of a Band-Aid or is it, I mean, it's a tricky thing.
It is a tricky thing. The reason why we're including all these properties is we don't want to just Band-Aid it.
Yeah,
We want to take a look at as many properties as we could in the complex.
and you get a drainage easement on these, so you
Yeah.
can go in and clean it up or repair it again easily.
Yes. We'd have to get drainage easements with those property owners that's on it.
Question, it looks like nobody lives, they're all rental properties. And, there's the church there that's the pipe section. I mean, are we improving the property that could be then redeveloped? And like, I mean, is it? I don't know if I feel good about that.
There's always an opportunity for someone to go in and redevelop the property. We do this, but remember, one of the things that we're looking at for the new policy is that we're saying not associated with new development. Now, that's a look back. We don't have a look forward. We don't have a method to say, if we do a drainage systems project, then you can redevelop for X amount of years.
Yeah, you don't have the library like that, yeah.
How's it look downstream?
I mean, it's a fairly stable downstream.
No, it's
I was thinking the same thing. I'm looking at the creek making a right-hand turn, if that was obstruction
Right here.
down towards down there.
We haven't had,
Just thinking if they got any erosion there, we do improvements upstream, they're gonna come find us about how we made that border.
At the same time, the scores are pretty significant if we don't do anything.
Right, yeah.
there's always that.
That's all I think. Of course, I looked at that 35 years ago, it was a problem, so it's nothing new. Back to Mr. Winters or.
Okay.
Developing that.
So that was that project. I don't know if you want to move on to the next project or do you want to vote on this project?
So we're on, vote on this.
Move to approval.
All right, that can be a second. Okay, so we have Mark makes a motion, David a second. All in favor? Any opposition? All right, on to the next.
Next, we have 2 properties on Brandon Wood Drive. Follow up the gentleman that is located at 6204 Brandon Wood. Stabilized last month. And so we've got, right down here, 6204 and 6280 Bramblewood. We've got Resident Lane, prior to the project, which will be going out to hopefully by the end of this year, and drainage basin to 6204 and 6208. This 32 acres. You know, we've got some, erosion going on here within that 10, 15 feet of the building. We've got some sinkholes crossing the property line. And, we did, look at the pipe. We can't look at the pipe, we don't, because of the offsets. We don't think that we can line the pipe, so it has to be replaced. We'll look at RCP, reinforced concrete pipe. And, then we'll extend the pipe by about 10 linear feet. I know that came up last month at the meeting about you wanted to extend the pipe code a little bit. There was some concern about getting permits from the Corps of Engineers as well. And so we looked at that. We can extend it up to a point where we have 25 cubic yards of fill within the ordinary high water. So I believe that 10 feet would get you 2.5 square yards, so to speak, today. So I think that would be, we would be okay. So then we'll, extend that about 10 feet. We'll remove that 48-inch pipe that we saw, that was discussed last month. And we'll provide adequate load station as well, because it was brought up, if you make the improvements here at this property, what do you do downstream as well? So maybe some sort of spreader. And then again, comparing, we had $23-24 green, which was a project that came through mid 2021. Similar in terms of having to replace the section of pipe, similar length. You can see in scores, generally speaking, comparable. That project a little bit higher, which is in before. But overall, again, these scores are generally pretty close to each other, which is good to see. And study engineering design, 15,000, construction cost 90,000, total project cost 25,000, and $24 range was about $68,000. So I'll pause the questions.
You're gonna add pipe and put the bigger riprap in?
Yes, we'll extend that, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to extend the pipe as much where we have to get that nationwide.
Yeah, but why are you adding pipe just because the landowner requested, or is that helping with the runoff?
The last day.
Is that gonna increase the?
Yes.
Force of the runoff?
It was
Directly increasing the out of the pipe erosion force out there.
well, I think if you go back to that picture, he's got that erosion in this area, so if you extend that, you're not gonna have as much erosion in that area.
Right.
It's gonna be kicked down.
That's
trees,
just
and
his
then
backyard.
In a
That's
couple of
fine.
years, we're gonna get a request from the next neighbor.
Yeah, why are we paying for that?
The idea for him to maintain access to his yard.
We would get the, for that area that we would touch, yes.
Well, not extending the pipe, but he's not able to access the other side of his yard.
That's correct. That's his concern, access to portions.
The 10 feet came from him or that came from you?
That was me. Just, we would, either way, we make sure we extend it up to a point where we don't have to get a permit.
Yeah, that's just under the permit limit.
What about this, I guess, hole that you talked about last month, that's, image to the right, that you follow it downstream? He described, it's not a manhole.
It's just a section of pipe. It's about like 10 feet of pipe that's just sitting there.
That's vertical.
That's vertical. Yeah, so we would remove that.
Okay.
So the temporary pipe extension is a design concern. It's not just to provide access to the property, correct?
It's more of a homeowner request that we would look at and make sure that we could do it within the safety, not, compromising the structural integrity of the town. But that is up for consideration.
Yeah, that part sounds to me like something he wants to get the rest of his backyard. I don't know if that helps solve the complicated stormwater erosion issue.
I mean, I'm a strong proponent about piping creeks and daylighting wherever we can. We want to extend and bury a part of the stream just to provide proper access that we should have known about when we bought the property.
Yeah, because this doesn't head cut back. The pipe has always been in the same location, right?
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So it's been like that the whole
I
time.
mean, the erosion may be more coming out of it, but the pipe itself, the outfall's pretty good.
Yeah, and I feel like if he wanted, not to pick on this guy, but if he wanted to get a pipe to put, so it gets to the part of his yard, and he's paid for that, and the city can pay for selling the stormwater. Yeah, or even a bridge might be better, or just a full, something very.
Yeah, I think you have to convince me that it makes, it saves its house or whatever, it's some part of the benefits, right? Or whatever it adds safety.
Engineering benefit.
Yeah, an engineering benefit, then, he's gonna get, his house will be underground because.
There's not an engineering benefit.
There's no engineering benefit, it's more competitive process.
Chancellor, I mean, so the purpose of the project is to keep erosion from infringing on his foundation, right?
Right.
So there's gonna be some structural rigidity. It's gonna be a pipe, it's gonna be some type of a retaining wall or some structure that's gonna be needed to achieve the purpose of the project, right?
Right.
And so extending a pipe is certainly one of the options. If you don't do a pipe, you're gonna have to do some other structure to keep the erosion from infringing on the house. Pipe is one solution, not the only solution. Cost-wise, it's probably a comparable solution. I think what you looked at was, what's the maximum length we could take out without having to get a permit? It's still gonna be a reasonable cost solution. You might even be able to get credit for the pipe you're taking out. I think and we can look at that. It's certainly the homeowner's preference was clear. He would rather have the pipe. But I don't think we're not doing that because of the benefit to the homeowner. We're doing it because it's a solution to the erosion that's infringing on the foundation of his house, if that makes sense. It's a reasonable solution. The costs are comparable. I think it's still within the permitting bounds of having to go out and do a much more extensive permitting process. I think that's, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's the way we're looking at that is a reasonable solution.
And you don't think it's just gonna pass the erosion down?
I don't, it's not gonna increase the flow in any way.
And then the riprap wouldn't be a better way to dissipate the flows?
Well, we'll still need to dissipate the flow in some way, right? Whether it's, dissipating it 10 feet downstream or, I don't think that's gonna have impacts downstream. I think that, it's a spot solution, which drainage assistance projects typically are fairly spot solutions. The way we would approach them, but I don't see, whether you had a pipe or not in, making a difference in terms of downstream, and I don't see this increasing the flow downstream. But that's a good point. Energy dissipation is gonna have to be a part of the solution, regardless of where that discharge is.
I think that's my big question. Like, I understand the spot requirement, but to only treat it as a spot and not think about what's going to happen downstream is just a little Band-Aid. So if the engineers are confident that it doesn't create a bigger problem downstream for the next homeowner and the next homeowner.
That's where we make sure the consulting engineers look at and address.
So that's addressed in this design proposed to them?
Well, we can't ask the engineer yet to look at the design until approved by you guys and subsequent with the council. But that was we would tell the consulting engineer all these issues that are on the back of this.
You might go into the slide from the deck. I think it's keep going on. Yeah, so he said the distance from the deck to this stream is 15 feet. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
So extending the pipe 10 feet, does it really make a substantial difference in possible erosion that will be closer to the deck?
I think to what Wayne was saying, it does solve some of the erosion issues within the costs that is comparable.
You said it's faster, maybe I guess that. Okay, all right. He did, he says like 11 feet, so, okay.
Can you tell us where the left picture is relative to the right picture? Like, is
It's
that,
looking, other way.
like, where's the deck in the left picture, or, I mean,
Over here, it's looking the other way. So think of it, that is just rotated, 120 degrees.
and that's in his,
That's looking.
that erosion is in his yard across the creek?
Yes, yes. But there's singles on the other property, that's also.
And what is that mean, or whatever?
See that right there, that black line right there?
That's just his landscape edging. And that's the creek on the top left?
That's the creek, yes. So you can see it's kind of washed out.
And I don't want to try and micromanage you guys or the design engineers who are working on this. I think the group's preference would be for environmental reasons to avoid piping a stream if possible, but if the design calls for it, there's good justifications for it, that's fine, but I think just in general principle, we should try to avoid piping streams if we can.
We can certainly advocate for that. So that's the design engineer.
Any more questions for Chad? All right, let's have a vote. Is there a motion?
Move approval?
Mark, makes motion in a second. Any seconds, all in favor? Any opposition? And in favor. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. And you're still up?
I'm still up.
Yep.
All right, good afternoon again. So it's still unfold out the year. And we're going to talk about the drainage systems and stream stabilization policies. And this is kind of a refresher, not the exact same presentation as last month. So we'll just get on to it. We'll have the program objectives. Talk about the drainage system policy, then pause for questions, then look at the stream stabilization policy, and then questions again. Again, the stormwater stream management definition, for protect life, helping natural resources. Drainage systems program objective is to assist in reducing flood hazards from stormwater runoff, helping protect and improve water quality in local streams and other receiving waters. So we're all familiar with the drainage system program, obviously. But again, it's assist private property owners that have flooding from public runoff. It is a voluntary program. Drainage easements must be donated when city limits. And again, we're small scale. So, it was brought up before about, larger projects and making sure we have all the communities or all the properties involved in a community. We are a smaller scale program. So just the timing of the events to see kind of how we got here. 2016, the drainage systems policy was initially approved. Last month, you guys took a first look at it. So now we are at the second. And so just to go through the different sections, just kind of give you an overview of where we were, initially. So this is changes from the original, that's what you saw last month. So in section one, that's like significant, and on down the list, as you can see, changes from the August revision or the August presentation. We had the changes came in section three, which we will go over, but again, we'll still cover all sections. So section two of the previous policy included 4 definitions. We added permanent drainage easements, temporary construction easements, rights to free riparian buffer, and eminent stream, stream and conservation easements. The definitions are remain the same as severe erosion, structural flooding, street flooding, and the city, and we did not change any of those definitions from August of 2022. So we talked about section 3, which has the changes for eligibility. And, we touched on this a little bit with the HOA. Now the properties involved are common areas managed by stormwater owner associations whose members own those stormwater reclaimed parcels that are subject to recorded declaration of covenants. Among things have established the common areas on which the applicant project will be performed. One of the comments that came up last month was about the 10% and respecting the privacy of those involved. And we decided to take that out because we do have means of collecting money on a delinquent stormwater bill. We've never had an arrears of 10%, so we don't see that being an issue. And so again, and that's kind of what this next bullet is, remove this item on staff bill that would not. So section 3 clarifies association with development. Remember we initially had that 1-year look back. We decided to change that from feedback from you guys to 2 years, but understanding that 1 year could be too short. So we felt that 2 years was more applicable. Design and construction of drainage solutions. Initially said we'll meet city design standards. We decided to change or exceed when practical. So because we don't always have the opportunity to meet, for improving a situation, that should be something that we move forward. We're not always going to meet every city design standard in a situation where before there were stormwater regs, some of these developments. No changes to section 4. Again, participation in drainage systems projects will be based on funds available. No work shall be performed until approved by city council, and before that, this commission. Again, section 5, we do not have any changes from the version last month. What we really wanted to do was help match the but or excuse me, that was my slide. Upon successful completion of the stormwater repair project and upon establishment of the city for permanent drainage easement over these repairs, that was the existing policy, and we clarified that language with on dedication of a permanent drainage easement to the city associated with a particular drainage system project. Certain restrictions will apply. And why we have that in there was it kind of closes the door on the ambiguity of saying that you have to delineate easements prior to construction starting. Under the old language, it was, you could technically say upon completion of a repair project that opens the door for having to delineate easement after construction starts. And section 5, what we did was we wanted to change the language to match that of the unified development ordinance. Under a different policy, there were certain encroachments that would have to go through the stormwater manager. And then in the proposed policy, we'd like to add the encroachment to go through the engineering services director so that it is consistent. And these did not have changes from August of 2022. So what, in that case, I'll stop and pause for discussion, questions, comments.
Anything for Chaz on this? All right, so, do we need to vote to accept this, then it goes on to council, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. May I have a motion to accept, the drainage system policy? Katie, second. Mark, seconds. All in favor? Any opposition? Very good.
Thank you. And we'll move on into stream stabilization. The stream stabilization program objectives is to support healthy and natural resources by reducing sediment loss, stream bank erosion, and reestablishing extreme site riparian buffer. Now we have a stream stabilization policy that is needed to address erosion that will be covered by the drainage system program. You could have projects, with the Wooten drainage assistance program that has severe erosion threatening the structure. But as we've seen today, we also have projects within the city, and Mr. Wall presented that there's erosion that's not threatening the structure, but there's a lot of water quality benefits to the project. So again, these pictures unchanged when we had the severe erosion from the Pooh Road project that we saw. We had severe erosion, found to be a good candidate. We're still working through the model to see where exactly these projects are going to fall. But again, good water quality benefits here from the picture on the right. So the timing of the events, in 2016, we had the drainage assistance program created, which this policy for stream stabilization is mirroring that. Last year, in the middle of last year, June and July, and I believe September, we presented some concepts of the stream stabilization program. Last month, we had a draft policy, and now we're having the revised draft. So again, this is the same chart as we saw from the drainage systems policy. Now, this is a little bit different. This is the column, the middle column is changes from proposed drainage assistance policy 2022 version, rather than the original drainage systems policy. And then again, the changes that were made were from that version in August 2022. We had moderate changes in section 3. Definitions relatively the same. Street and structural flooding were moving from the drainage policy to the stream stabilization policy, as those items do now apply to stream stabilization. Excuse me. We removed the 10% contributing properties that are in arrears. Again, the same concept as we had for drainage assistance. The project must provide 20-foot stream side riparian buffer area to establish a conservation easement to be dedicated to a city which stream side riparian buffers to be measured starting at the top of the bank. And we have language in stream side riparian buffers shall not be subject to utility easements. That language we felt like was a little vague. So we removed language. Again, section 3 qualifying changing the look back for development from 1 year to 2 years. Section 4 very similar to the drainage assistance policy in that participation in stream stabilization projects. Language there says drainage assistance projects and the drainage assistance policy. And then again, we had the language to match that of unified development ordinance so that we're consistent with the rest of the city when they come in. People want to put in fences or anything else. And then I'll pause for questions, comments.
One question, the gentleman that presented earlier, talking about their lake is it a private organization as opposed to a typical homeowners association? It sounded like the wording in this still kind of addressed homeowners associations. Would that kind of project that's on the separate, not homeowners association kind of partial qualify?
I think it would, we would make sure to get clarification from legal, but the intent is a commonly owned area with projects or houses in that area that are paying these stormwater rates.
I think the project he envisioned looks like a good project. I don't want to have that excluded just because of the way we word this here.
We would get clarification from them.
And I agree with you talking about. The situation applies when people that are part of the organization are all ratepayers. So it's the same thing. It's just a matter of how the ownership is structured, whether it's an HOA or a private entity outside of an HOA.
You might go back to your chart where you compare and see going on. Yeah, right here. So this is stating that the policy as it existed before August 2022, that column says these are the changes, slight, moderate, significant. So when you get to the changes after August, in number 3, is it saying that the moderate is in comparison to the August version or to the pre-August version?
Yes, good question. Thank you. From the August version. We didn't.
So you went from you backtrack, went from significant to moderate. So the overall change for the August version was considered significant.
Right.
And then you looked at it again. Well, I guess the question is this moderate, which is the further?
It's from the previous version, the August 2022 version. So
I guess
of the stream stabilization policy.
significant is more.
Right.
Right, so then I guess it moved back. We backtracked a bit.
What change led to that recoding of it from significant to moderate?
Well, no, I guess.
We have made one month of changes to make it modern.
There were just a couple of changes. We changed just a few words, a few sentences with that in the version that was presented to you guys last week.
Okay, that's okay. So it's August and August. It's a derivative of the August, not of the, okay. And then overall, if we were to keep the August framework, then it would still be a significant change from the pre, got it?
Yes.
Before last year, this concept wasn't in wasn't available. Right? So,
Right.
So we're using softer techniques, stream stabilization techniques, not just the wrap and whatever techniques, harder to the edge techniques. This is an opportunity. These things in a different way. Right? But you got to put the 20-foot easements on both sides, two little conservations. It's conservation easement versus drainage easement, things are, the rules are a little different.
Correct.
How many of the people, so you have your chart and put 20 projects up there. How many projects start to fall into this category? Do you have a chart of those projects yet?
Yeah, well, I said we had about 45.
Okay.
That would be pulled from DA immediately. And we've got a number more of people calling in as they start to hear about this program, kind of ramping up a little bit. Or whatever.
Do you have the 1.25 billion funded for this program? Like that, the drainage assistance?
That's a separate funding. It's $500,000 for the program.
Is there a reason you do drainage easement on one and conservation easement on the other?
Yes, so the drainage easement is more for, if you have severe erosion that's threatening a structure and you gotta go in and armor it. And if you have a conservation easement, you want it sloped, you want to protect the buffer a little bit more.
Yeah, I was just thinking to prevent them from redeveloping, I guess.
Well, they can't hurt me. And the conservation easement is a little bit more strict in terms of what you could.
Yeah.
All right, are we ready to vote? One of the things that I heard from Mark is that, we can vote on this, but make sure that the language matches the intent. And that the case that we heard from Mr. Wells earlier, this would be a part of this. Don't want the language to trump.
We'll get clarification from legal before we even take it to council.
Okay. All right, motion for this. All right.
Second, Barry, all in favor? Any opposition? Very good. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
Okay, Wayne? All right. Thanks, everybody. I would like to discuss the two items that were in your package. First, we have the annual report from the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission to City Council. This is a summary of the fiscal year 22, which went through the end of June of earlier this year. And I would like to thank Ariel Bushell for working on this report, pulling it together, spent a lot of time interviewing staff associated with various programs across the division, and put this very nice report together for your review. And then I'll review this briefly. Right after that, I'm going to review the proposed work plan for fiscal year 23, which will be presented by the commission to city council, which will I guess, be the guidance for the work that you will do continuing through next year. So where we are in terms of schedule, this is your first look at this. We would suggest you provide any comments or feedback that you have. You'll still have time to review it. What we would propose would be send us any changes or revisions. We will take those today over the course of the next month. Bring this back to your October 6th meeting. Ideally, try to finalize them before we're at that meeting. And then they will be presented to city council then at the subsequent city council meeting. And the commission will present this. So these are work products of the commission, not of staff. So I want to emphasize that. And this is something that's been clarified by our boards and commissions group within communications and engagement. You'll notice there's not a city seal or brand on here, and that's very intentional because this is a commission work product. So this is your work product, and we will assist you in making any changes, revisions you would like to make. So I want to emphasize that from the beginning. So I will review this very high level. You're welcome to comment now, but know that you're also welcome to provide any input comments. They can be editorial comments. They could be, you left out this whole item that we want to make sure is highlighted. So feel free to speak up in any way. So, again, high level, your photos are in it, so it's yours. We have our mission and vision statements. The mission statement has remained pretty much the same for recent years. The vision statement, some of you will remember, is fairly new. I think we did that maybe a year and a half ago. If anyone wants to revisit those, we can discuss that. Next section is infrastructure projects, highlighted the most visible projects under construction, as well as highlighting a number that are in design. We are very design heavy right now, anticipating that we'll have some construction bonds coming up, and then in another year and a half or 2 years, we're going to be a lot more construction heavy. That's kind of the cycle of where we are in our program right now, but still lots of good work moving forward. Drainage assistance programs, a high level overview, just heard from Chaz Webb. A couple of projects moving forward, as well as some policy revisions. It's going to give us more flexibility in terms of stream stabilization. So that policy moving forward will be a highlight of next year's annual report. But lots of good work. A number of these projects under design, many of them are being bundled and will be bid and let out for construction as a bundle from an efficiency standpoint in terms of getting contractor interest and being able to manage these moving forward as a group of projects. Rainwater rewards. You've heard from Justin Markham on a regular basis on a number of those projects, and been very integral and involved in moving a number of those forward. The project highlighted in the photo there, which was early last fiscal year, was the Silva cells that were installed at Chambers Park. Provide some additional stormwater detention in that area, while also having a very nice aesthetics of the tree boxes being included as part of that project. So that's a highlight we wanted to talk about. Moving into the stream restoration and water quality. We've talked a little bit about the USGS and NC State work that we're doing to use remote sensing LiDAR to help pinpoint where high erosion areas are and give us an initial screening. We're continuing that work. We've also talked about a mitigation bank feasibility study, which that's going to be coming to the commission here for an update and discussion of the path forward. But that's an important project that we're moving forward that's going to give the city of Raleigh a lot more capabilities to implement mitigation locally within our own city limits rather than purchasing mitigation credits outside of the city. Lots of good green stormwater infrastructure work and projects to highlight here. One down at Walnut Creek across the street from the Wetland Center, an innovative gravel wetland that seems to be working fairly well. Perhaps if you drive along Glenwood Avenue, you've seen the bioretention area right there near St. Mary's. And then there's a couple others, bioretention in Glen Eden Park, which is just on the west side of the city, outside the Beltline. And then the Peterson Street, another type of linear bioretention. We're working to fit into tighter areas to get that stormwater benefit. That one is also down the street from the Walnut Creek Wetland Center. Wooten Meadows Park, a project that we did in conjunction with Parks and Rec, a new park area off of Millbrook Road that has some stormwater wetlands and bioretention to treat the parking areas as well. Another nice project we're very proud of. And then there's another, the focus of our stormwater GSI policy that we're moving forward. The highlight there being leading by example. So we're working to implement that policy right now. We're using GSI on city projects. We've already got a lot of good momentum in that direction and continuing to work with other city departments. As we mentioned, the East Civic Tower that is under design now. We're incorporating GSI, Silva cells in the tree boxes out in front, green roof on the terraces there. So lots of good work there. Another project that's moving forward. You may have seen the groundbreaking for the Gibson Park and Play at Dix Park. We've worked to incorporate some GSI into that project above and beyond regulatory requirements as well. So continuing to work with other city departments on how they can implement GSI. And the picture there is a roadway project, Fox Road project, that has some GSI incorporated into it as well. Equity inclusion framework, we've got a good start on that in terms of the framework, but we see that an area that we'll continue to focus on very, very heavily moving forward. We got the framework for the outreach and engagement, especially related to watershed planning. So I think that's a very good start, but also now moving into the optimization. I'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of the work plan. Stormwater utility fee with your input and endorsement, we implemented a modest change to the rate this past year, 18-cent increase per single family equivalent unit, about a 2.5% increase allowed us to increase some revenues to offset operational cost increase. So we'll be moving into that in not too distant future, start talking about options for next year. And then the design manual, you've heard some updates from Ben Brown. A lot of work going on that, still going to be coming back to the commission here shortly for input on the design manual. Flood early warning system, another one that we've been working on. Lots of good progress on that program. Very proud of that, adding some additional cameras to give us more capabilities in terms of seeing what's occurring to help provide additional, information other than our gauging station information. And then at the bottom here, the floodplain regulations, a huge milestone, I think, in terms of getting new floodplain regulations passed that prohibit or significantly restrict development within the 100-year floodplain. So no structures allowed within the floodplain. Lots of work on asset management. You all did a tour of this facility that helped you see a lot of the team, and it does a lot of the operation and maintenance, a lot of the condition assessment, a big part of our asset management program. And we're also implementing asset management related to our dams and stormwater control measures. So a lot of work going on in this area as well. The maintenance unit, highlighting some of the quantities and all of the work that they've done. A lot of just ongoing maintenance work, ramping up our capabilities and documentation and tracking associated with that. But also, I'd like to highlight our maintenance crews also increasing their construction delivery capabilities. So a lot of the smaller projects now, we're actually able to do the construction in-house with our construction crews. Saves a lot of time, not having to bid it out, saves a lot of money, not having to pay a contractor's profit. And our team is really doing a very nice job in the delivery of those projects. Lots of watershed planning work, ongoing. Continue to give you updates on those. We told you a little bit about the MS4 permit compliance. You've heard some updates on that. Good news, no deficiencies from the audit last week. And then finally, rainwater rewards and rain barrel program. And then lastly, we want to highlight all the good education and outreach work, the art contests that we have, the ongoing Enviroscape and information that Carmela does in terms of her outreach and participation in a lot of other city events. Stormwater stays very visible across the city types of events as well. And we're proud of our internship program. I think you've heard a little bit about that. That's a program that we're bringing in a variety of students from different locations, and that's a program that we're going to continue to emphasize as well. I think that's it, right, Matt, for the annual report. So any questions, any feedback at this point? We'll be glad to take feedback now. If you'd like to send it in via email, any edits or other high-level input, we'd be glad to take that. And I'll pause there before going into the work plan, if anyone has any input.
Yeah, I just want to share that. I've seen a number of these, and I think this is the best one, at least I've seen. I think the narrative, the layout flows very well. So thanks to your team.
Thank you to Ariel.
Ariel, for doing such a wonderful job at showing.
So one comment, go back to the first slide, we've got the group picture. I need to crop it up just a little bit so you can't see I'm wearing shorts, okay?
I'll make a note.
Just No, I really have to give kudos to Ariel too. She, as you know, she is relatively new. I mean, only have been here a few months, right?
Yeah.
So she really, got up to speed very quickly and reaching out to a number of people throughout the division, gathered a lot of information. It's really a good exercise to do as a new employee. That gave her exposure to a lot of the folks that do all this good work, but I have to give real high kudos to Ariel for the work that she did pulling this together. I agree with you, Chair, that Mr. Chair, that this is a high quality product. I think she's done a nice job. Okay, with that then, thank you for the feedback. Anything else comes up, please let us know. I'd be glad to take comments. Bring it back to the next meeting for a final review and sign off. So also have the document for your proposed work plan for fiscal year 23. And there are a lot of similarities to the last work plan, but let me go through and highlight a few. I'll talk about each of these briefly and highlight some of the major changes from the last work plan. So starting with the GSI infrastructure, that is a continuation, ongoing implementation of the GSI plan, which this commission has helped develop, and there was a subgroup and a subcommittee that helped develop that. That will be an ongoing effort with the next near term focus on developing and implementing the GSI policy for use of GSI on city projects, but lots of other components to that as well. And item B, incentives, continuing to work on developing incentives for the private development community to implement GSI. Obviously, the city can do it on our projects, but ideally, we would like all developers to implement GSI into their projects and not just to meet regulatory requirements, but go above and beyond, especially in the redevelopment situation. You heard from the new Riverkeeper reference the legislation that does not allow us to regulate existing impervious area on redevelopment. So we need to rely on incentives for developers to offer to do that voluntarily. And a number of things that we're doing are expedited review processes called Green Raleigh Review that we have to try to explore that and other incentives, but still continuing to work on ways to do that. Item C, the stream-based stabilization and restoration programs. Partly that was the policy that you heard today, so we're already working on that one. So appreciate your support on that. We'll continue to develop that program. Stormwater credit and adjustment manual. That is something that we are is working on in parallel with the design manual. So that's something that we'll be bringing to you probably early next calendar year for some feedback there. I mentioned the Riparian buffer nutrient banking mitigation offset program. That's again something that we've got some early feasibility work. We'll be bringing that to the commission shortly to get you up to speed on that and our vision of how that will move forward. Item 2, capital improvements. Drainage system policy. Some of that falls under the DA policy changes that you've already seen. But we are also looking at making some updates to how we prioritize assets in capital improvements, and we'll be bringing that to you early next year as well as some of the policy changes related to how that CIP worked. If you can move to the next page, please. Back. I probably can do that. Sorry. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. So at the top, drainage policy, drainage improvements on policy on private property, talk about that. Policy for public drainage easements, that will be maintained by the city. We continue to update and look at those. The lake management evaluation program, the policy changes are done. The commission was involved in that probably 2 years ago. So now though your ongoing role is where there are lakes that potentially fall under that program, we will bring them to you for review. And there is one we're starting to look at right now called Campon Dam. And that is the dam that has received a notice of violation from North Carolina Dam Safety. It is a multiple ownership situation. The city's interest is we have a city street that goes across the dam. So complicated situation, one that we see potentially could fall under the lake management evaluation policy. So starting some early assessments on that. Once we have some alternatives available, we'll bring them to you for your review too. But that'll be an ongoing process, and there may be other projects that come up. Equity considerations in stormwater policies. I mentioned this is going to be an ongoing issue. We've made some improvements to the DA policy in the past, but we'll continue to look at how we can update policies to be more equitable. CIP prioritization model and how equity can be incorporated into that prioritization model is going to be a big focus there as well. Mentioned the flood voluntary flood hazard mitigation program. That's something we're moving forward with. We have a new position advertised right now that is a new position created this fiscal year that just started in July. Is being advertised now for a flood modeling and mapping support person. So that's going to help that program move forward. And then ongoing UDO changes as needed. So that's kind of a standing item that can come up along with the cooperative technical partner program. That's another one that we're talking to FEMA about accepting the responsibility for flood mapping changes. That's a program that we're working on that we'll be bringing back for your input. Soil erosion control ordinance requirements, those are kind of stand-up, and those may come up on an ad hoc basis. And then a lot of the community outreach and involvement programs, again, they come up on an ad hoc basis as needed. Those are more standing items. And then lastly, just on an ongoing basis, continue to review DA projects as they come up. Continue to review rainwater rewards projects as they come up. And if there are requests that come from city council related to stormwater ordinance changes, have the ability to review and provide guidance and input on that. And then the last item, as you do on an annual basis, provide us some feedback and input on capital improvements projects, budgets, in the overall budget that is recommended. So again, be glad to take any feedback now. It's a fairly comprehensive work plan, but I do see us touching, most, if not all of these items at some point over the course of the next year. Glad to take any editorial comments. You can email those in if you have markups or recommended changes as well before next month.
I find it very comprehensive one. Thank you.
Great. All going to be busy.
And again, no action on this.
No action needed at this time. Those are just information with the looking forward, the hope that this and the annual report, which are typically brought to council concurrently, would be approved to go to council at the next meeting on October 6th, and then taken to council probably at that the third Tuesday. Yeah. I think it's I don't know. I think it was a calendar, maybe the 18th. I think it's maybe the second council meeting in October. Yes, ma'am.
I had a question about the watershed studies. You mentioned a meeting or so ago, you'd like to find a way to update those more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
The 37 of them doesn't have to, and even the ones planned to be next, those could go faster to identify projects more quickly. Any thoughts on how to do that?
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's so what we're trying to balance here is when we do watershed studies as compared to how we used to do them, they are much more comprehensive. There's much more, as we discussed in the equity framework, much more focus on outreach and public involvement and public input and surveying, but that slows them down.
Right.
It makes them a little more expensive to have all of that. So that's the balance, is doing them right versus doing them quickly. And it's a cost issue as well, right? It's always a balance of how much money do we put into planning versus how much money do we put in the implementation of the capital improvements projects that are identified from those planning projects. So certainly welcome input. And I think we've given you a little bit of an idea of our path forward. We're moving forward with the Rocky Branch study that will be starting next year, as well as a couple of the South Raleigh watersheds. That's our plan moving forward. But certainly open to, if there's other parts of the city We go by a combination of where we're seeing a lot of issues, where we see problems. We're incorporating equity issue considerations and how we're establishing those priorities, knowing that, complaints aren't always equal. We used to use complaints as a way of prioritizing those, but complaints aren't always equitable because not everyone complains at the same rate. So we're trying to balance that as a consideration of where we're doing the planning studies, knowing that the planning studies then often do lead to more specifics in terms of the capital improvements that go into the CIP for where we can look to correct issues as well. Good question, not an easy answer.
Anything else for Wayne? All right, thank you, Wayne.
Thanks very much, appreciate it. Please feel free to email any input or comments.
Is there any other business?
Just want to take a moment to compliment staff and the city as a whole for the technology and all the work put into these hybrid meetings. I mean, this is really top notch here. So congratulations, both people. For it.
Thanks to Matt Hunt, that makes it ready to roll every month.
Thank you.
Anything else? I may have a motion to adjourn.
So Wooten,
Mark? There, okay. Here's a second.
what else wants to be?
All in favor? It's no opposition. See you in October.